Redditors, what are your terrible first date stories? About 5 years ago, I asked this woman out from Plenty of Fish. We decided to meet up and have a dinner at Montana's. They had a damn good fajita section at the time. Anyway, I show up and she looks significantly better than her photos. Now, I know this seems like a good thing, and it was. We really hit it off, and after chatting for about 4 hours, the restaurant closes. She says she's really enjoying the evening and wants it to continue. She invites me back to her place to play some Super Mario. Now, as a pretty nerdy gamer dude, that is the sexiest invitation I've ever received. This is some sweet stuff. After a little while, she excuses herself to the bathroom. I tunnel vision the game and eventually realize she's been gone for about 30 minutes. This seems like a pretty long time to go to the bathroom unless there's some serious issues with dinner. Or maybe she's putting on lingerie? I decide to knock on the door. No answer. Okay, now this is concerning. It's her condo. It's not like she tried to ditch me in her condo. I would have just stayed and eaten all her food if that was the case. I break into the bathroom and find her passed out on the floor with a rubber band tied around her arm and an empty needle lying on the floor. Story 2. I don't know if this counts as a first date, but I'll proceed. Went out drinking and ended up sleeping with one of my friend's friend. I had never met her before, and we were both pretty drunk when we met. A week after the fact, I took her out to dinner. Everything was going great through dinner. The restaurant we went to was near a big, higher-end shopping district. After dinner, we decided to go to the shopping district and drink at the Cheese Factory bar. She tells me the friend I met her through is working at the store in the shopping center and we should visit her. I say sure. We go there and this girl starts trying stuff on. The common friend takes it up to the counter. I walk up and our common friend looks at me and tells me it'll be $460. I'm like, what? I tell her I'm not paying for it. The girl on the date tells me, why am I being cheap? Me, the girl I banged, and our friend walk outside to talk about the situation. I let them talk, and I said it was a pleasure. Find your own way home. Her house was 30 miles away from the mall, and I was the one driving. I left her there, and I went out drinking with my buddies. Story 3. Posted this ages ago on another forum. It was the first time I met someone off the internet, and she nearly broke my faith in the whole system. Her name was Tanya, and she was from the northern suburbs of Brisbane. She was into hip-hop music and described herself as lithe. Her picture looked a bit old, but my loins thought it looked alright. We arranged to meet at my local pub. I rock up and sit down, and within about 20 seconds, this tubby chick in an M&M branded tracksuit comes over and sits down. I'm about to say, excuse me, but this table is reserved, when I realized that it is Tanya. I can tell the similarities to the picture she sent me, if I squinted and added 50 pounds in about 10 years. She sits down and says, "Friggin', how are you?" with a mouthful of gum. I sit horrified across from her. I am simply stunned. I want to run, but I'm frozen on the spot. I decided to tough this one out. We order some food. I order a light calamari salad, she orders the lamb shanks and some garlic bread and a cheese pizza. I am not messing with you. I decided at this point to start drinking heavily. So does Tanya, except I think she had about 4 hours on me. She was all over the place. Conversation was mainly about her and how much she loved shooting guns at clay targets. Also feral pigs and how you haven't lived unless you've knifed a pig and felt its blood run over your arms. It is at this point I start looking for hidden cameras. I am completely sure I'm on some reality TV show. I start smiling faintly at the windows and nearby bushes in a vain hope that a well-dressed lady with a microphone will come out and tell me Tanya is an actress. We'll have a laugh and I'll shake my head and go home feeling silly but relieved. That doesn't happen. Our meals arrive. I daintily pick at the salad, being mindful not to make a pig of myself. Tanya has no such qualms. She's eating it like a Viking, just pure mastication and yammering about guns. She licks her plate clean, licks it. She then asks me, "Are you gonna finish that?" and points over at my half-finished salad. Knock yourself out, love. It was like feeding time at the zoo. A zoo where the only animals were a weird hybrid walrus warthog creature. I was in shock. We finish the meal and I pay. Now it gets awkward. I do the whole charade of, gee, will you look at the time? Tanya, swaying slightly, just asks me outright, "So, you want to take me home and bang me?" I was disgusted. There was absolutely no way that was happening. I have standards. Standards that need to be kept. So I bent her over some rubbish bins in a nearby alley and shagged her senseless. Story 4. I had something similar, though possibly even worse. My first year of uni, I got chatting with this guy in the cafeteria. We got on swimmingly, had a good laugh. He asked if I wanted to go for a coffee in the evening, which I agreed to. Just two guys hanging out, right? So we are sitting in this coffee shop on their big comfortable sofas. Again, the conversation is flowing, blah blah blah. I do remember thinking it a bit odd that he had his arm not around my shoulder, but resting along the back of the sofa, nearly around my shoulder. Never mind, I thought in my sweet, innocent way. So, anyway, after a couple hours, he asks me if my parents are okay with it, if they know I am out. Well, yes, I said, obviously. I had to borrow the car, so of course they know I'm out. No, he said. Out. Suddenly, it dawned on me. I was on a gay date. I was on a date with another man, a proper date. Well, obviously I broke up with him in "It's not you, it's me." He was a bit upset, claimed I was leading him on, and I must have known, but we've both moved on. Still, interesting first date. Story 5. Oh man. Freshman in high school. First date ever, we went to a movie. My first warning sign was that he just smelled like BO when he put his arm around me. He was just awkward and strange in general, but we didn't interact much because of the movie. His dad picked us up from the theater. The dude knew that the child window locks in the car were engaged and purposely farted to test me? I remember violently gagging, his dad unlocking the locks, and never talking to that guy again after that evening. Story 6. My friend set me up on a blind date. We met in the bar area of a local bar/grill to have drinks and get to know each other. Things were going great. She laughed at my jokes, she touched my hands while we chatted, we genuinely hit it off. Then some dude comes over to our table and hits on her. I informed him that we were on a date and he apologizes to her, completely ignoring me, then adds on, "I thought maybe he was your brother or guy friend." Okay, he was alpha, whatever. She would not drop it. All she did for the next hour was complain about how rude he was, no matter where I tried to steer the conversation. Then she gets up to go tell him off. I try to stop her and she promises to be right back. She goes to the bar and begins laying into him. She stomped and her arms were flapping in rage. She stayed over there for like 20 minutes, eventually sitting next to him on a stool and laughing at something. They then came over to the table and she asked if I wanted to go out with them to see his new motorcycle. I said no, I paid my half of the tab, she was under the assumption I was paying hers too, and went home. Half an hour later, she called me, mad as hell. She yelled at me for ditching her. I didn't have it in me to yell back, so I just hung up. That sucked, and people tell me I deserved it for being beta, I guess. But I wasn't heartbroken. I didn't watch my future slip through my fingers or anything. What really sucked was our mutual friends that set us up, after hearing the whole story, still took her side. My name. She didn't even bang him. She came back inside and you were gone. You should have said something if it bothered you. Yeah, I'm the bad guy here. Whatever. Piss on all of them. Story 7. I was a lot younger and I had never been on a bad date. I met him at this waffle place. He would not stop talking about how hot I was. I tried to ask about anything else, but it was all he wanted to talk about for 30 minutes. He suggests going somewhere else, and I'm game for it just because I want anything to be different. I get into his car, and he immediately starts going like 20 over the speed limit. I asked where we were going, and he said that he was taking me to the assault place. I said, that isn't funny, and he was like, what makes you think I'm joking? I could know all of the good places. I'm staring out the window and thinking about jumping out of the car. He takes me to the mall and proceeds to start groping all of the mannequins, just walking up to them and grabbing their fake bulge. Then he tries to grab my dong. Then he tells me about the time his house was raided by the police. Now, I'm just wanting to get back to my car without making him angry. We get back into his car. He says he wants to swing by a friend's house to wish her a happy birthday. I agree on the condition that it's fast. We go to her house. Her parents almost back out of the driveway into us. She gets in the car, and I'm like, why is she in the car with us? My date drives us all to a motel, and the girl in the back keeps calling someone on her cell who's already in a room. He doesn't answer, so now we're just sitting outside a motel room in his car, and the birthday girl keeps talking about how she's going to bang this guy in the hotel room, or get her birthday sex on, girl, as she called it. This prompts my date sitting next to me to say, yeah, I thought this dude was gonna bang me, but I don't think he's down. Then he looks back at me, and I don't say anything. The girl in the back suggests that we go get condoms. I just start texting all of my friends, all of them, begging anyone to call me or give me an excuse for him to drive me back to my car. The girl leaves the car and runs inside the hotel room to get banged. My phone rings and my friend Austin calls and he's like, say whatever you need to. And I fake this whole conversation where my cousin is in town and we need to hang out. The guy relents and drives me back to my car. He keeps locking the door until I say that we'll go on another date. I lie super hard and say yes. I practically run to my car. He called me a week later and left this weird voicemail that ended with a request to call me back if you want to. I didn't, and here I am, alive. Story 8. Junior year college. Miraculously managed to ask out a girl I've had my eye on for a while. She invites me over to her place for what is clearly a date. I figure we'll chat for a bit, then pick somewhere else to go. Instead, step 1, I show up to her house, walk in, and she instantly introduces me to her parents. Step 2, she improvises a piano piece and asks me to guess what it's about. I can't guess, so she reveals the theme was a baby bird using its egg tooth to break out of its shell. So she begins slowly unfurling her obsession with birds. Step 3, she snuggles up unbidden and shows me a bajillion photo albums of all her world travels. A lot of birds, without saying anything remotely interesting about any of them. Every time I tell a dumb joke to break the silence, she laughs way too hard and somehow scoots even closer to me. Step 4, extreme Christianity casually reveals itself, raising more questions than it answers. Step 5, her parents leave for a movie and tell us we'll have the place all to ourselves for a while. They might as well have winked at her. Step 6, she gives me a tour of the upstairs. I'm getting uncomfortable, so I invent an excuse to leave. She pauses for a second, puts her leg across the stairwell, blocking me, and says in what she must have thought was a sexy voice, "Are you sure you can't stay for just a little longer?" Step 7, she practically mobs me, trying to squeeze in multiple goodbye hugs before I make it out the door. Step 8, she calls me multiple times for the rest of the night, letting me know she had a great time and hoping she didn't reflect any unchristian values in her behavior. I somehow managed to say everything and nothing all at once and left with a clean conscience. Story 9. He messaged me on OkCupid. Wasn't anywhere near my type, but he seemed like a cool person. Talked a lot about his time in the Air Force, but not in any weird obsessive way. I agreed to go out with him after a few days. He picked me up from my house. That's mistake number 1. We didn't make any real plans beyond walking at the pier at the beach. But he kept mentioning that he wished we could have gone to dinner, but he left his wallet. I had a little cash on me, but not enough for dinner for 2, and I really didn't like how he kept angling for me to buy him food. Oh, and bumming cigs. While at the same time talking about how much money he saved from being in the Air Force and bragging about his car. So I've long decided I'm not feeling this guy. Takes an uncomfortably long time to convince him to take me home. He just kept hugging me from behind and telling me to look at how pretty the ocean was. I guess he was trying to be romantic, but it was pretty freaking awkward. He finally drops me home, really aggressively leans in for a kiss with his mouth way too open, and finally leaves. I'm thinking I'll talk with him the next day and let him know I'm not interested in going out again, since he really seemed to think we hit it off. A couple hours later, I get a call from a number I don't know. It's this guy's coworker at Subway. He took my number from his phone so he could warn me about this guy and his lies about the Air Force, because I just seemed like such a cool girl. Then he says, "So I know this is a really weird way to meet someone, but I think you're just really cool and maybe we could meet up sometime and chill." What in the... I just hung up and never talked to that Air Force dude again. Story 10. I decided to go on a date with this guy. Real suave, thinks he's hot stuff. Golden boy of the campus kind of thing. Dating in the place I was at meant go out to dinner and then hit the only club in town for a little dancing. He worked part-time as a marketing advisor for the club, so he tells me in advance that he might need to schmoo for a few minutes while we're there, but after that he's all mine. Okay, no problem. We get there and he drags me around, introducing me to the owner. He also introduces me to the DJ, the lights guy, every important person he could think of to show off to me. Then he has to go do the schmoozing for a bit, so he sticks me in the DJ's booth, making it out like it's some big honor/VIP thing. Half an hour later, he still hasn't come back, so I go out on the dance floor to have fun with a couple of my female friends. He immediately rushes over and escorts me back to the DJ booth, saying he'll just be a couple more minutes and asking me to wait because he doesn't want any other guys stealing me away. I play Tetris on my phone for another half hour, then go back to dancing with my friends. He rushes over again and begs me to go back to the booth. I tell him no. He leads me over to a VIP table where a bunch of his friends are sharing bottles of wine and orders me to sit with them if I want company. I sit with these strangers who show no interest in talking to me for about 5 minutes, then come to my senses and go dancing again. When he comes over this time, he's finally ready to dance, but I'm so completely over it that I just tell him I'm not interested anymore. He acts like I've shot his dog. He tries to get close to me me and put his arms around me to butter me up or whatever, I just tell him the date is over and I don't want him touching me. He slinks off to his buddies at the VIP table and spends the rest of the night looking mournfully in my direction like a moron. Story 11. I went to the movies with this guy I met from Tinder. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but obviously if something happened and I clicked with the guy, I would go with it. I told him this beforehand when he asked me what I was on Tinder for. I was more just trying to get myself back out there after a bad breakup. We went to the movies, he paid for the tickets and snacks even though I offered. He holds my hand during the movie and we go for a walk afterwards. He again asks me what I'm looking for. I explained that I was going through a rough breakup and wasn't ready for a serious relationship, but I liked him so far and would like to get him know him better. He got quiet and said we should go back to our cars. We drove separately and met up there. He doesn't walk me to my car, gives me a half-assed side hug. Alright, I'm thinking he's not really into me. That's okay. I walk to my car and proceed to drive. 5 minutes later, I get a text from him. A couple minutes later after that, another text. Pretty soon, my phone is blowing up with texts from him. He's telling me how on a first date you're supposed to get a kiss and he didn't want to hear about my ex. All I said is that I'd recently gone through a breakup and I didn't want a new committed relationship just yet. He told me that I shouldn't be on Tinder if I was going to lead guys on. I told him that I was straightforward with him from the beginning and it wasn't my fault he chose to ignore what I had said. I told him I had a good time and I liked him, but he just blew any chances of anything happening by acting like this towards me. The texts would not stop. He would blow up my phone begging me for another chance, telling me how he's such a nice guy, and then calling me a bitch. And then going back to saying I should give him another chance. He got mad at me because he talked to his friends who also apparently had matched with me and I was talking to them too. It was too much drama and led me to deleting Tinder. I couldn't deal with that much drama from someone I had gone on a date to the movies and barely started talking to. Story 12. I was kinda talking to a girl for a while and she invited me out for a weekend with all her friends. We drove about 80 miles away from our area and I didn't know a single person there. When we got to the hotel, she just left me in a room full of people I didn't know. I walk out of the room and see her banging one of the guys from her group of friends out in the parking lot, in the back of a car. I had to call my mom and ask for money just so I can get my own room. She then asked if her and some of the other people could crash in my room, so they didn't all have to share just one. Story 13. When I was 15, I went on a date with this 20-year-old guy. I wasn't even attracted to him, but when you're a gay teen, your choices for dating are pretty slim. Anyway, he was quite a heavy and hairy guy, but had it in his mind that he was a twink and dressed accordingly. So I was in the train station waiting for him to show up, and I see him approach, and he just looked ridiculous. It was during the emo/scene phase, so he was wearing those Kanye shutter shades and hot pink, some really tacky neon hoodie, white skinny jeans with 2 sets of studded belts, one in white, one in pink, to match the shutter shades, I suppose, and terrible hair that had been fried by obsessive straightening. I don't mean to sound harsh, but he looked so foolish I wanted to burst out crying. Even the prettiest, most androgynous boy beamed straight out of DeviantArt couldn't have pulled off this outfit. And this guy was built like Chewbacca. Anyway, he comes up to me and without even saying hello, he puts his arm around me, grabs my ass, and sticks his tongue down my throat. Not always the safest or most comfortable thing for two guys to do in public, without so much as asking. He does this for what feels like 10 minutes, and being a teenager, I didn't really have the experience or confidence to tell him to stop. For the second time, I'm fighting back tears already on this date. So we go to Starbucks, and on the way he asked me if it would be okay if we met up with 2 of his friends for a double date. I'm thinking, you couldn't have mentioned this earlier, but I say, oh yeah, that sounds fun. So we get to Starbucks and find his friends already there waiting. They're both in their 40s. One of the guy addresses me by name. Obviously, everyone knew this double date except for me. The 2 older guys were friendly enough, but both really into BDSM and a bit too comfortable talking about it with a teenager they didn't know. The guy who I was on the date with was a complete dickhead the whole time, completely undermining me anytime I spoke and making really unwanted sexual comments about me the whole time. At one point, he pissed me off enough that I told him to shut up, and he responded by playfully putting his hand over my mouth. Anyway, we left Starbucks and he asked if I wanted to ditch the other 2 so we could be alone. I was thinking, I'd honestly rather hang out with the 2 middle-aged fetishists than you, but I said, sure. His idea of a romantic hangout was a Primark, a budget clothes shop for non-Brits. I just distracted myself by looking at cheap clothes that I didn't really want to buy and tried to ignore him pinching my butt. But that's when he saw it. There was a wall with an underwear display on it, and perched in the middle of the wall, slightly above our heads, was a gold lame thong. He looked at the gold lame thong and asked what I thought of it. Not knowing where he was going with it, I kinda chuckled and said it was hideous. Imagine my horror when he started taking it off the wall and held it a foot away from me, saying, "You'd look so sexy in this." At this point, I was so miserable and beyond humiliated that I could feel tears welling up in my eyes and my voice becoming whiny, and I was begging him not to buy them, but he kept ignoring me. Just before he got to the till, I had a moment of clarity and turned the other way to leave the shop. He noticed that I was leaving and started chasing after me, shouting my name, waving the gold lame thong around all the while. So he catches up with me, convinces me to accompany him to the train station so he can head home, which I do. While we were waiting on his train, I spotted one of my friends who was another gay guy, so I go and talk to him, and I can notice the dickhead's eyes staring daggers at him. I kind of exchanged a look with my friend as if to say, "I'll tell you later," and hugged him goodbye. Dickhead didn't like that. He started ranting to me about how he didn't want me having gay friends and how my friend obviously fancied me, and I was too drained to even start arguing with him. Finally, his train arrives and he pulls the same move as he pulled when we met. Only this time, he shoved his hand down my undies and puts a finger in my butthole. And on that charming note, he left. The last communication we had was a text he sent to me 2 minutes after his train left that read, "I miss you already." Story 14. Went out with this guy who seemed totally normal at first. We went to dinner and then he suggested going to play pool. Okay, sure. So he's driving us to this dive bar he likes that has pool tables and casually mentions, "You're so cute, I could just kidnap you and keep you forever." I was young and stupid and thought he's totally joking. We played pool at this crappy place and then he goes to drive me home and mentions again how much he'd like to kidnap me, going into details on how he would do it. Luckily, he took me home and I didn't talk to him ever again, so no kidnapping occurred. Oh, he also mentioned a few times how he loved my Jewish name and how his parents would love it if he finally brought home a Jew. I was not Jewish. I told him that more than once. It was a really terrible day.